Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and this is the Frontline Changes Report for the day of 911 for the 22nd of August, for the past 24 hours essentially. And there's a lot of frontline changes. Again, the war for this entire year, I would say, since the Russians started to do their counter-offensive, has been super active, and we have frontline changes almost every single day. So there's frontline changes. In fact, it's actually every single day. So there's frontline changes over in the Kursk front, over at Apenosovka, Krasno-Otoberske, Pogrebki, Roskaya Penopelka, Novo Vian over in the Svatove front, Klishchiivka over at the Bakhmut front, Chasiv Yar and Toretsk over at the New York front. This is one of the big news. And Avdiivka over at the Avdiivka front, Novo Vian. Let me see which one. Then Pitishe and Paraskovievka over at the Donetsk front. And the big news is actually in the New York front, where the Russian forces have entered Toretsk. We will talk more about it. First, we go to the Kursk front. So the Kursk front continued to be very cursed. The Ukrainian forces has been geolocated to have reached the river over at Krasno-Otoberske. So they have basically continued to advance. Is it a bit fat, the arrow? Slim down. So I think this looks a bit better. So they have made some progress around there. However, based on the information from the Russian side, the town is still haven't fallen entirely to the Ukrainians. The Russians are defending this area here. So we will continue to monitor the situation over at Krasno-Otoberske. Over in south of this location, Ukrainian forces has been geolocated just off Apenosovka. This confirmed Ukrainian presence around this area. So the previous one was over at Komarovka. The Ukrainians were attacking there. We also have confirmation the Russians are still at Komarovka. They are defending it. It's not captured by the Ukrainians. So the Ukrainians are attacking through this countryside region against Apenosovka. According to the Ukrainian mapping, Apenosovka has already been captured by the Ukrainian side. But based on the Russians' perspective, Apenosovka is still under Russian control. This is why there is two different maps, because the Russian and the Ukrainians have entirely different perspective of what is currently happening in the battlefront. So this is why DPA's mapping have two maps. And in case you do not know, you can actually access this map over at defensepoliticsasia.com/Ukraine. You can find the link in the description. So you can actually look at the source yourself, and see whether I'm bullshitting you or not. So and the next frontline change is over at Pogrebki, if I'm not mistaken. So over at Pogrebki, very interesting, we saw Russian forces being geolocated, confirming Russian capture or presence around Pogrebki. So the Russians have positions within Pogrebki, and this clears up a little bit of this fog of war around this region, because we have no idea what the hell is happening around in this region. In fact, this entire highway that is entirely blue might actually be red. So, and given the fact that the Russians could have full control of the entire highway, they simply move over here. So this is the important thing to note, that despite all this mapping that you're looking right here, is only an indication based on previous information of what the situation is, based on whatever we have. This is not based on guesswork. This is all sourced, which is why the map may look very different from Deep State UA or the Russian mapping from Ryba or whatever Russian sources. So this is very important for you to understand. If there's any changes based on assessment or analysis from my side where I make a judgment call, I will tell you in the report. So anyway, that's the Pogrebki region. So the next frontline change is over at the Suja sector at the Ruskaya Konopelka. Battles continue to be raging within Ruskaya Konopelka. Ukrainian forces has been shown on video in fierce battle, or rather fierce destruction, as they continue to step into this ambush within Krasnaya Konopelka. Russian presence of BMP-3 within the settlements confirmed that the Russian regular forces has somewhat arrived in this region here, because BMP-3 is one of the more one of the most modern version of the IFV, the infantry fighting vehicle, and the presence of it shows that there is some regular forces already defending in this area. This is the first time I believe that we have clear indication of Russian main force operating in this Kursk front. Because previously we only have special forces. Yes, we have a lot of air force, a lot of drone force, artillery, but in terms of armor, I would say this is the first time we actually see proper engagement from the Russian side. So Russians are definitely holding the line around here. So Ukraine forces was geolocated trying to go along from the outskirts, and this also was destroyed, this armored vehicle. So basically, because of this persistent presence of the Ukrainians, I have changed this to captures. So this is so the Ukrainians are going to have presence around here, and yes, you may say that the Ukrainian forces may be destroyed, but you do not know because you only saw a glimpse, a small segment of the war, the battle that was fought there. Who knows, there was even more Ukrainian forces entering into the village. You do not know. So I also do not know. So we can only map it based on the best information that we have, which is what the footage showed. The Ukrainians are in Roskaya Konopelka. They might die, but they are there. So we will see, as if the Russians manage to re-secure Ruskaya Konopelka, then we of course will draw the border to show that the village has been re-secured by the Russian forces. Otherwise, the Ukrainians are in Ruskaya Konopelka. This is how we do mapping. Okay, so we don't do gray zone bullshit. So and I also saw description, comments asking about, saying that I don't believe in gray zones, but yet I use the word gray zone. The way how, so gray zone means we do not know, the front line is unclear. Despite the way how we draw it is still unclear. Generally, this is indicative, as I mentioned, so it's a gray zone. But to map gray zone into the mapping would just be like coping. So this is just what I want to say. So we jump all the way to Novo Vian over at the Svetove front. Ukrainian mapping, Deep State UA has claimed the Ukrainians have launched a counter-offensive operation in the Novo Vian region, have captured huge amount of grounds around here, claiming like hundreds of Russian soldiers getting killed. So yeah, whatever it is, this is what they claim. So this is the situation, the frontline change over and over there. And this is not captured, this is just Ukrainian claims. So the Russian mapping will not change because this is purely claimed from one side. The next frontline change, we move to Chasiv Yar. So over at Chasiv Yar, there are some frontline changes. The Russian forces has been geolocated within more or less the same area, or this northeast corner of the Otebolskoye or Zovneve micro district of Chasiv Yar. So this geolocation invalidates the Ukrainian claims that they are there. So Russian forces have basically have a foothold within this region, but they didn't seem to push out by much. It's pretty much more or less the same region. So, and then we have some major news. South of this position at Klishchiivka, massive change in terms of the front line. Russian forces has been geolocated at the very end of this heavy entrenchment of the tree line, and they are at this heavy entrenchment, confirming Russian capture of the entire northern part of Klishchiivka. So because for them to be here, I think this entire area have to be secured. So this confirms Russian presence and capture of the entire of the northern part of Klishchiivka. But still, Klishchiivka would not be declared captured because there is still a little bit of Klishchiivka in the south that is not confirmed to be under Russian control. So yeah, cope with it. Okay, but this is a massive frontline change for a frontline that we don't have much changes for a long time, and clearly the Russians were doing work around here and no one is mapping it until now. So this geolocation solved the mystery for us. And after Klishchiivka, we have frontline change over at the New York front, and this is the big news. The Russian forces have officially entered Toretsk. So based on mapping from Deep State UA, the pro-Ukrainian source have mapped that the Russian forces have basically captured most of the high-rise zone, and this comes very suddenly. As usual, I believe that information was withheld because there's no way this kind of things happen suddenly. Some pro-Russian sources has already declared this area as captured by Russian forces as long as 1 month ago. So But for the Ukrainian side, the Ukrainian mapping have always mapped this as a gray zone, this entire area as a gray zone. And first, personally, I've never seen any information or sources like there's those strong ones to show that the Russians have captured this area earlier. So anyway, this is the frontline change for the Toretsk region, and the Battle of Toretsk begins. So this is the big news, and we will continue to monitor this Battle of Toretsk. This is one of the big cities. In fact, this is bigger than New York. New York is actually a smaller city than Toretsk. Toretsk is actually the bigger city. So some people told me that this front should be called a Toretsk front, but it's not as cool. Toretsk is much more difficult to pronounce. New York is easier to pronounce. So no. So we shall continue to monitor the situation around here. The next frontline change is over at Avdiivka. So over at the Avdiivka front, yes, it's still at Avdiivka front because there's one major reason why I still calling this the Avdiivka front, because of the distribution of forces. The New York front and the Avdiivka front, all the way to perhaps even Kharkivka and Novelsk, is under the same command, under the Russian side. So if I call this the Pokrovsk front, it will be confusing because I can't just cut this away to the Donetsk side. So we will continue to monitor and see how is the best way to do this. To do the cutting. Tentatively, this is still going to stay as at the Avdiivka front. And the frontline change over at the Avdiivka region, Russian forces geolocated at the top of the tree line, confirming Russians have progressed out of Avdiivka on the westward direction, probably trying to find a new vector of attack against Novo Vian. And at Novo Vian, the Russian forces have entered Novo Vian, starting the Battle of Novo Vian. So if I zoom in a bit, you can see that the Russian forces, based on the mapping by Deep State UA, the pro-Ukrainian mapping, the Russians have basically started the Battle of Novo Vian. They have entered, so we will continue to see battles. It's already raging with FPV drones zooming into Novo Vian. Over at Pitishe region in the south of Zavinny and Komashevka or Novo Zelane, as I mentioned, the Ukrainian mapping clearly will update this the next day, which now we are seeing this because they don't want to put it all together at the same time. Ukrainian force, first we have a geolocation of the Russians raising the flag in the middle of Pitishe, and Ukrainian mapping have shown that the Russian forces have basically taken the entire tree line south of this position, as well as capturing more than half or most of Pitishe. So this is a huge frontline change for in this area here. But I still feel like the front line is much more further than this, and this is just their mapping. As this with this mapping, Pitishe is still not captured according to the Ukrainian side. So I'm not sure this chain of settlements belongs to who. Is it Pitishe or is it Kalinove? We will continue to monitor and see how this goes. I will check out and see the address of this region here to see what who actually where does this buildings actually belongs to. So after Pitishe, there's still one final frontline change. It's over at Pogrebki. So over at the Donetsk one and Pogrebki, Russian mapping have claimed that they have secured the entire northern part of Pogrebki. So there's no more salients around here. The Russian forces allegedly have already taken this entire region. So straightening the front line further up north all the way to near Bodyeda, and allow them to continue the battle towards Konstantinivka from the north. So anyway, these are the frontline changes. So do check out the situation report when it comes out, maybe in 8 hours time. So because we need to let this video have some runtime. And yeah, you can also check out the yesterday's sit rep over here, and I'll see you guys in the next update.